Okay, so I know Tubi had a really annoying commercial during the Super Bowl this year, but they also have a ton of great movies. In fact, they've got better movies than Netflix and most other streaming services, and they're all free to watch. You don't even need an account to start watching them. In this video, we're going to talk about 25 excellent movies that are free to watch on Tubi right now. 5 movies from 5 different categories, including action, drama, comedy, horror, and sci-fi fantasy. This video is sponsored by the Beard Club. I'll be telling you more about how I've been using their stuff later in the video, but right now, let's talk about my top action picks, which include the latest Mortal Kombat movie from 2021. Which I thought nailed doing a video game movie. This is essentially a movie for the child in all of us, but it's got a hard R rating. So while it's not for 13-year-old boys, it really is targeted at the 13-year-old boy that still lives inside of you. This was such a fun watch. Is it a great movie? No, but it is an incredibly entertaining watch. The fight scenes are all great. To me, this was very much like a Marvel movie, except done on a hard R rating, which I'm all for. I wish they made more things like this. They also have Gone in 60 Seconds, both versions, the Nicolas Cage remake and the 1974 original. And the Nicolas Cage one is a fun PG-13 movie, feels a little bit dated today, still a fun watch, but I highly recommend checking out the original from 1974. This was all done like guerrilla style with no permits, it's real car crashes. The guy driving Eleanor and several other cars in the movie was the creator, director. He was independently wealthy, released the movie on his own, and actually died in a horrific stunt accident making the second film, but this first one is so wild, even to this day. If you know that you're watching something that was filmed illegally and all the car crashes are completely real, it really does make a difference. Another fantastic throwback action movie is Last Action Hero with Schwarzenegger. I absolutely love this movie, and this is one that I did not really get at all when I was a kid, but as I grew up and had consumed more and more action movies, the jokes in this movie are so funny. It's all spoofs of traditional sort of 80s and 90s action movies, and they're all completely on point and so fun to watch. Even the cinematography in this movie is big with depth of field, and it just looks and feels like a big blockbuster action movie, and that's because it was actually directed by John McTiernan, who also did Predator and Die Hard. So this feels like a real genuine action movie because it is. But it also has a lot of fun with the genre. Probably more fun with action movies in particular than any other spoof movie I can think of. It's worth noting that all these movies were just recently added to Tubi, so there's a lot more fantastic movies that have been there that didn't make this list. Now, I just recently rewatched The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington, and I think I enjoyed this movie more now than I did back on its release. This is an incredible post-apocalyptic movie. It's actually based on a graphic novel series, but it feels very much like a Western. In fact, he even rolls into this old dusty town that's sort of run by Gary Oldman's character, and it's very much built like a Western, just set in the apocalypse. There's some fantastic story elements. Some things are a little obvious, and some things are not, making this a really cool watch. Even if it's a little bit on the mediocre side when it comes to Denzel's filmography, but it's Denzel Washington. I mean, mediocre on his filmography is still pretty damn good. Last up in the action category is Rampage, another movie that will definitely appeal to the 13-year-old boy living inside of you. This, however, is PG-13. It does not have a hard R rating, but it does have some intense moments, but above all else, it's got giant monsters fighting each other, which is also based on like an old video game, like an arcade game. I guess Mortal Kombat is an old arcade game too, for that matter, but Rampage does not take itself seriously ever. The characters are all kind of chewing up the scenery and having a good time, including Jeffrey Dean Morgan. The villains are a little cartoonish and it all works together. Again, it's self-aware and it's just a fun time watching a movie. Now, if you're not in the mood for fun, you want something a little more serious, they've got some fantastic dramas, starting with Brooklyn's Finest. This is actually from the same director as Training Day, and I could not wait for this movie to release. I'm such a big fan of Training Day, and this looked almost like a spiritual Training Day sequel in the making, and it is not. It kind of misses the mark a little bit, but it is still a fantastic cop drama. It's just not on the level of something like Training Day. Don Cheadle's great in this. Wesley Snipes is amazing. This is one of his first, if not his very first big comeback role, and he absolutely kills it. And then Richard Gere and Ethan Hawke both have these different characters, and they're all very different sort of caricatures of police officers in New York, and it does work on a bunch of levels. There's a bunch of fantastic scenes and sequences in this. It's just not glued together quite as well as Training Day was. Another really great NYPD movie that actually stars Edward Norton and Colin Farrell is Pride and Glory. This involves police corruption at really deep levels, and it's among guys who are career police officers. The men and their families are all in the police force. It's legacy stuff, and then this corruption seeps in, and this movie actually goes to some really dark places. This does not feel like your typical cop movie, because they're not really investigating crimes and going after the bad guys. They're going after each other, and again, this does go to some grim places. But my next pick on this list goes to the grimmest places of any movie ever, almost. David Fincher's Seven. And it was released over 25 years ago, so it was incredibly grim for the time, and it is still grim today. But this movie holds up incredibly well. Not only does the story and the acting and the delivery and the directing, everything hold up, the look of this film is amazing. It does not look like it came out in the mid-90s. It completely separates itself from the look of everything that was being produced at the time, and it's because they use different chemical processes on the actual film that give it this incredible contrast and this beautiful, stunning, dark, brooding look. Honestly, even when you know the twist and where it's headed, the performances and just the wow factor of that twist are so amazing. This is one that really never gets old. The only problem with Seven is you do kind of have to be in the right mood to put this one on in the first place. I've actually got a couple of westerns in the drama category as well, including one of the best and most dramatic westerns of all time, Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. This is one of the earlier movies that he directed, won a bunch of awards, and really kind of cemented him as a fantastic actor and director. Not only is this an amazing Western, but it also takes a lot of the themes from classic Westerns and sort of looks at them in a different light and reevaluates them, and it has a completely different tone as a result. Even though it looks very familiar, it looks like a Western you've seen a bunch of times before, they do explore some darker themes in this movie, and I think it's all incredibly effective, and it's Clint Eastwood, and it's always entertaining. And then another Western, one I love even more, honestly, one of the most beloved Westerns of all time, Tombstone. Now, something I find incredibly interesting about this movie is that the director was fired or walked off set a couple of weeks into filming, and Kurt Russell actually took up the reins and finished directing the movie. Now, he's not credited as a director, but he did an incredible job finishing this thing, and it's a shame he doesn't do more. But this is based on a true story. Every single character is great. Even Bill Paxton's character is fantastic in this. And it's packed with so many memorable scenes that are completely entertaining to watch no matter how many times you've seen them, particularly all the ones with Doc Holliday and the OK Corral shootout. I'm telling you, if it's been a while since you've seen it, put it on. I know there are commercials, but there's less commercials than there used to be in cable, and you're guaranteed to enjoy this more than most new releases these days. Now, in my experience, it's near impossible to watch the movie Tombstone without wanting to grow thicker, fuller facial hair, which is where today's sponsor, The Beard Club, comes in. Now, believe it or not, I don't wake up looking this good. With a beard like this, it's often all over the place in the morning and needs a fair amount of maintenance to keep it looking sharp and full. And as someone who's had a beard for almost 20 years, I've tried a lot of stuff, and I'm telling you, these guys at the Beard Club are the real deal. Whether you're looking for beard growth oils, styling products, or a top-of-the-line trimmer, the Beard Club has everything you need. Their main focus at the Beard Club is to help you get a thicker, fuller beard, and the great thing is they offer a guarantee, which means if you're not seeing results within the first 5 months, they'll offer you a full refund. And I've only just started using the growth kit, but I'm starting to track my results. I mean, yes, everything's fairly full here, but my beard's fairly patchy on the sides, and I've always wanted to be able to grow it a little bit higher. So I'm using a combination of their vitamin spray with their growth oil, which is not only supposed to help my beard grow, but it also makes it just feel fantastic, and a couple of growth vitamins every day. But I use those in combination with their shampoo and a derma roller twice a week to help try to promote more growth on my face. So if you want to take your beard to the next level, go to beardclub.com/flickconnection and take their quiz, where the Beard Club will recommend a personalized kit that's tailored to your beard's needs. And don't forget to use my code FlickConnection to save 15% off your order. Honestly, my beard has never felt softer or healthier. So go to that link in the description, take the quiz, see what's a right fit for you, and don't forget to use Flick Connection to get that discount. But speaking of great stuff, let's move on with the rest of the movies on this list. Now, onto the comedy category. They've recently added one of the biggest, most successful comedies to hit theaters in the last decade, Crazy Rich Asians.
Okay, there's a lot of children starving in America, right? I mean, take a look at her. She's American, huh? Really skinny. You want to look like that?
No.
Then eat your nuggets.
I absolutely loved this movie. There were a handful of characters that I adored in this thing and thought really elevated it and made it a rewatchable movie. But this is kind of a romantic comedy, wedding setup type thing. But I'm telling you, even if you don't typically like those types of movies, it doesn't matter. This one generally goes where you think it's gonna go. The things that you assume are gonna happen in a movie like this happen. But again, the characters are so rich, and I don't just mean that they're filthy, stinking rich, which they are. That alone makes this pretty interesting just to see the lives of Crazy Rich Asians, but the way that the characters were written and performed, again, elevate this thing and make it a really hilarious comedy that's well worth watching for everybody, not just people that like romantic comedies. Now, speaking of romantic comedies, my next pick is kind of an anti-romantic comedy, and it not only stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but this is actually the only movie that he's directed to date, Don John.
My body, my pad, my ride, my family, my church, my boys, my girls, my porn.
He plays a fantastic character in this movie that is actually a porn addict. Now, while that's sort of the central theme, there's a lot else going on. This isn't just about porn addiction, and I will say it fits into the comedy category. It does have kind of a light mood, even if it does go to some deep places a couple of times. Scarlett Johansson is not only fantastic in this movie, playing sort of this interesting character, but she's also smoking hot. Julianne Moore is amazing in this thing. Tony Danza plays his father, and he is incredible in this movie. But it goes to some pretty poignant places as well and makes some really fantastic points. I'm honestly surprised that Gordon-Levitt has not directed anything else yet. A comedy I've loved for years and think is just incredibly funny is Saving Silverman. This is a highly raunchy movie for a PG-13 comedy. Most of the raunchiness coming from Amanda Peet being chained to a chair for half the movie. And don't get me wrong, this is a stupid movie. Jason Biggs is trying to marry her, she's this awful woman. His buddies, played by Jack Black and Steve Zahn, two incredibly funny actors, decide to kidnap her so that the wedding can't happen. It's stupid. I mean, Jack Black is doing ridiculous stuff. Steve Zahn is an animal control guy. I believe he gets in a fight with a raccoon at one point. It's a dopey, goofy comedy, but everybody's really funny in it, and it goes into just some bizarre directions that most movies in this category just won't even mess with. If you're in the mood for a stoner sci-fi movie, Paul has got to be the best one of those to have come out in recent memory.
Hi. I'm Paul.
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, both from Shaun of the Dead, star in this, and Seth Rogen voices this alien that they find, and it turns into kind of a road movie. Not only are all three of those guys fantastic in this movie, especially Pegg and Frost, I love those two guys as a comedy duo, but Jason Bateman plays this agent hunting them down. He's particularly fantastic in this as well. If you're in the mood for some laughs and a decent sci-fi road movie, Paul definitely scratches every single one of those itches. And then I'll wrap up the comedy category with Goonies, which is a solid action-adventure movie. I recently watched it with my 7-year-old. He loved it. I mean, this is a movie that is completely from a different time, and it still holds up and captivates young audiences today. It's a shame they really don't have more movies like this for younger audiences. I mean, it's either animated movies or superhero movies. That's all kids are allowed to see these days, it seems, and I really wish somebody would try to make something as good as this, because this still holds up as one of the best movies of its kind ever made. But that brings us to the horror category, where they have It and It Chapter 2. Now, I have seen both of these movies on different platforms. I have not seen them together in quite a while. And they're together on Tubi, which I think is just fantastic. I think they are incredibly creepy. They've got all the modern day special effects that really help elevate the Pennywise entity, and they did a great job of using some practical effects with CGI. It's all pretty seamless, and the characters are great. The cast of kids they put together for the first movie are all incredible, especially for young actors. And then all of the adults, I can't believe some of the people got put in that movie. It's a fantastic cast. I'm a fan of everyone involved. And the second one goes into some insanely trippy directions, which totally worked for me, especially for a big budget horror movie. Those so often seem to miss the mark, and I think It 1 and Chapter 2 totally nailed it. Now, another stupid movie on this list that I think is just really fun to watch is Deep Blue Sea.
Deep Blue Sea! They ate me! A fucking shark ate me!
It's a lab out in the ocean with super smart sharks that figure out how to start hunting down people inside a secure facility. It's absolutely ridiculous and totally fun to watch. One of Samuel L. Jackson's top moments is in this movie. The scene where they break the glass is fantastic. This is another one that has some practical effects mixed in. Not as seamless, the CGI in this movie doesn't hold up super well, but the practical effects totally do. And most importantly, the movie never really takes itself too seriously. I mean, the characters are all in peril and it's all very serious for them. But I mean, LL Cool J is hiding from sharks in a kitchen. Like, it can only take itself so seriously. And again, just a totally fun sci-fi horror watch. But a sci-fi / horror movie that's even more fun to watch, in my opinion, is Slither.
Something's wrong with me.
Written and directed by James Gunn. In this movie, a small town is taken over by this alien plague of these little slithery, slug-like creatures. Elizabeth Banks is fantastic in this movie, Nathan Fillion is really funny, and Michael Rooker ends up having this insanely gross role that is just so fun to watch. I will tell you, this is a gross-out movie, but it's really funny at times as well. If you're a fan of horror comedies and you don't mind being grossed out, Slither is an amazing watch. If you like straightforward horror movies, they also recently added The Conjuring. I still think the original is probably the best, even though the second one is probably a little bit scarier. That nun really kind of drove me nuts in the second one, but The Conjuring still holds up as one of the better big-budget mainstream horror movies released, again, in the past decade or so. Now we jump to sci-fi fantasy where they add another recent release, Reminiscence. This was a Warner Brothers release back during the pandemic, and I think a lot of people missed this movie. But it takes place in sort of a dystopian future where cities are flooded, and Hugh Jackman runs a program where he allows people to revisit memories. Rebecca Ferguson is fantastic in this, and she looks just absolutely stunning in every single sequence. He then becomes not only obsessed with her, but obsessed with revisiting his memories. This is a romantic movie that has some really dramatic moments in it and just some stunning visuals. It's science fiction, but it's going to feel a little bit softer than something you might expect from a Hugh Jackman sci-fi movie. It's not one of my top picks off of this list, but for new releases, if it's something you haven't seen, this will make a pretty cool watch. They also have The Fifth Element, another movie that is just insanely self-aware. The effects all hold up. It is just a blast to watch. But in terms of goofy sci-fi movies, The Fifth Element just has so many different elements, from shootouts, explosions, comedy, four-dimensional car chases. I mean, you name it, it's crammed into this movie. And the look and feel of this thing still holds up. It's from the mid-90s and it still looks pretty solid today. A really great fantasy movie for the family, in fact I think I might watch it with my family this week, is Kubo and the Two Strings. I'm a big fan of the Aardman animation group. They do Wallace and Gromit and all of that stuff. I think they make some of the best stop-motion animated movies. Along with this crew, I mean, they've done Paranorman, Missing Link, and Kubo, and I think Kubo is easily their best and most epic movie. It's absolutely stunning, especially when you know that all of this stuff is in camera. These are all figures that the camera's actually picking up. Plus, it's an incredible, epic adventure story with all sorts of stunning characters and one of the largest models ever put into a stop-motion animation movie ever. There's a scene with a giant skeleton, and the skeleton was done to scale and was quite large, and it looks incredible in the movie. Another amazing one for the kids would be Jumanji, the original with Robin Williams. This is another one from the 90s that holds up incredibly well. Solid mix of practical effects with CGI. Both the practical and the CGI do look a little dated today, but it's not too distracting. And it's just a fun, epic watch. This is another one. There aren't that many insane adventure stories like this for young kids. And Jumanji is easily one of the best, up there with the Goonies. And then I'll wrap up this list with another 90s classic, The Craft. I know some of you are going to rush over to Tubi to watch this one, and some of you are not going to care, but this is a cult classic movie about some girls starting a cult. Not really a cult, but it was a joke on the tip of my tongue. I couldn't let it go. Now, I will say this is one that does not really hold up for new viewers. If you loved this movie back in the day, odds are it's going to make a fantastic nostalgic watch. But if it were to be your first time watching this movie, this is one of my weakest recommendations on the entire list. Still though, makes a killer throwback 90s watch on a list of bangers that again are completely free to check out on Tubi. You don't even have to give them your email address to start watching these movies, on most devices anyway. Don't forget to go check out that Beard Club link in the description below. They really are fantastic. I love the stuff. Go check that out, but I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Tubi episode, and you will see me on the next one.